Welcome to Chapter 5, Video 4. Here we're going to be discussing dietary fat guidelines. The acceptable macronutrient distribution range for fat should be 20 to 35% of total calories. And this is a nice wide range that allows flexibility when meal planning. Now, athletes and highly active people may need more energy from carbohydrates and protein, and as a result, it actually reduces their fat intake to a little bit lower than the general population. This will be visited again in a later chapter. Now, the type of fat we consume is very important. Not only should we look at the total fat, but we need to pay attention to the type. Saturated fat should be no more than 7% of our total calories in our diet, and trans fat should be reduced to the absolute minimum. As we discussed earlier, there is no requirement for trans fats in the human diet. Trans fats must be listed on the food labels. Most of the fat in our diet should come from the monounsaturated sources and the polyunsaturated sources. Now let's look about the fats that are actually in foods. Visible fats are those that we can see in our food or can easily see that have been added to our foods, such as salad dressings, chicken skins, and so on. Now, hidden fats, on the other hand, are those that are added to processed or prepared foods to improve the texture or the taste, which we may not be aware of or that occur naturally. Now let's talk about limiting fats in our diets. We want to reduce the intake of saturated fats. We want to avoid or limit trans fatty acids. It's important that we shop and we cook smarter. When we're shopping, again, it's very important that we read our food labels, and when cooking, we need to pay attention to how much fat we're adding. For example, if you are using butter in a recipe, what is the minimum amount of butter that you can use yet maintain the integrity of your product? Or if you're stir frying something, how much oil can you get away with just to keep things from sticking to the pan? Do we really need to have a lot of extra oil floating around? So playing around with the minimum amounts that we can use is not a bad idea. It's important to select beneficial fats such as those omega-3 fatty acid and really paying attention to fats while we're eating out. It's so simple to grab the sticks of butter or to grab the pats of butter and spread it on our breads, or oftentimes when we're in restaurants, we're tempted by foods that are deep fried and so forth. When you're at a restaurant, be really careful of anything that contains a creamy sauce or a creamy dressing, anything that's fried or crispy. Those are key words that the item probably contains a lot of fat. Now let's talk a minute about fat replacers. Snack foods are frequent targets for fat replacers, things like chips or crackers, and these substances can reduce the fat content of the food. Now, some fat replacers, such as Olestra, have not been proved very popular or effective because of the potential GI side effects. Now, our growing obesity problem indicates that fat replacers do not help Americans lose weight. Now, on the other hand, this does not mean we shouldn't look for non-fat milk or reduced fat dairy products, for example. A skim milk or a non-fat milk, the fat that's naturally in the product is removed, but fat replacers are not added. So the fat is just removed. However, the quality of the protein and the calcium and the other vitamin minerals remain intact. So please don't mistake reduced fat foods or non-fat foods from those that are fat replacers. There is a difference. Now let's talk about the role of fats in chronic disease. The chronic disease most closely associated with diets high in saturated fat is cardiovascular disease. And we've talked a little bit about the relationship there, that diets that are high in saturated fats and trans fats tend to increase blood cholesterol levels, and then that tends to cause cardiovascular disease. Now, the role of dietary fat in the development of cancer has been extensively researched, but the relationship between some cancer types and dietary fats is controversial. For example, breast cancer. It's very hard to say that a diet high in fat causes breast cancer, but there could be some relationship with certain types of fats and cancers. The strongest association between dietary fat and cancer is for prostate cancer. Please proceed to the next video in our series.